Second hour of Fox News Live. I'm Rich Edson. This is the seventh and latest in a series of drone strikes aimed at boats carrying suspected drugs headed for the United States mainland. Democrats and Republicans have voiced concerns about the administration's aggressive tactics in international waters. Friday, President Trump was asked if Maduro was ready to talk.
He has offered everything. He's offered everything. You're right. You know why? Because he doesn't want to around with the United States.
There you go. Lucas Thomas is live to West Palm Beach, where the president is spending the weekend at his Mar-a-Lago golf estate before heading back to the White House this evening. Lucas?
Well, good afternoon, Rich. Combat operations continue in the Caribbean by the U.S. military. And just about an hour ago, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth posting the following recently declassified drone footage of a seventh strike against a suspected drug smuggling boat. Hegseth says the boat belonged to a Marxist group in Colombia and Venezuela, known by its Spanish acronym ELM. I believe we have the footage of the strike right here, Rich. The State Department has put this group, known as the National Liberation Army, on its terrorist list since 1997. The terrorist group operates in Colombia and Venezuela and has a history of drug trafficking. Colombia's president just posted that he says this was a fishing boat that got annihilated. Hegseth says the boat was on the U.S. intelligence agency's radar for the past. Drug smuggling is also using a known drug shipping route. It had drugs on board, according to Hegseth. He also said all three men on board were killed. There were no survivors. Hegseth also saying these cartels are the al-Qaeda of the Western Hemisphere, using violence, murder, and terrorism to impose their will, threaten our national security, and poison our people. The United States military will treat these organizations like the terrorists they are. They will be hunted and killed, just like al-Qaeda. Now, earlier on Fox News Sunday, Republican Senator Shelley Moore Capito said she supports these strikes in the Caribbean, but if it goes beyond that, she wants to see Congress more involved.
The president is right to be attacking in terms of the ships that are bringing these deadly substances and killing American citizens daily. And so I support that. Any extension beyond that, I think Congress needs to be a part of that.
Now, not all Republicans feel the same way, and certainly most
Democrats. Another deadly strike in the Caribbean. This time, the U.S. military says it took out a boat tied to drug smuggling and insurgent networks. 3 men were killed. No survivors, according to officials. The Pentagon released declassified drone footage, and the words being used are stark. The United States is treating these groups like terrorists and hunting them down. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said this was the 7th strike against suspected drug-running vessels. He identified the target as linked to a Marxist group operating between Colombia and Venezuela, the same group the State Department put on a terrorist list years ago. U.S. intelligence, Hegseth says, had the boat on radar for days, using a known trafficking route. The military's message: these ships aren't neutral. They're weapons in a war against narcotics and organized violence. Colombia's president, however, fired back, calling the target a fishing boat and condemning the attack. That contrast, U.S. officials saying they struck a trafficker's vessel and an ally calling it a civilian boat, is the clearest example of why these operations are so politically explosive. Back home, reaction splits down familiar lines. Some Republicans applaud the strikes as necessary to stop deadly drugs from reaching Americans. Senator Shelley Moore Capito said she supports striking vessels that bring deadly substances ashore, but warned that if America's campaign expands beyond interdiction, Congress should be involved. A cautious constitutional reminder in a heated moment. Not everyone agrees. Senator Rand Paul urged caution. He asked for evidence, names, crimes, due process, before we make a habit of blowing up ships. He warned that absent transparency, we risk casting suspicion on people who might be innocent. That's a heavy critique. Radical action without public proof fuels distrust at home and resentment abroad. Meanwhile, the situation around Venezuela is growing hotter. There are reports of a wider U.S. campaign in the region, a CIA covert action program, stepped-up military presence, increased air cover, the kind of posture that signals the White House is prepared for multiple lines of pressure. A former national security official described it as a 1-2 punch, intelligence and covert operations on the ground with kinetic power in the air. Why now? The administration frames this as a new paradigm, treating cartels and trafficking networks with the same urgency the U.S. once reserved for transnational terror groups. The stated goal: deter the flow of drugs and dismantle the networks that profit and wreak havoc. Skeptics worry about blowback and about inadvertently rallying support for regimes already under strain, about stepping into messy political outcomes the U.S. won't control. President Trump, spending the long weekend at Mar-a-Lago, told reporters he believes Venezuela's leader, Nicolas Maduro, has offered everything and has signaled there's little room for negotiation. The president has also said that if groups like Hamas, and, by extension, violent organizations elsewhere, continue to kill civilians, the U.S. reserves the right to act decisively. Those are broad statements that all but promise an assertive posture overseas. What are the risks? First, intelligence and identification errors. If allies or civilians are harmed, the diplomatic cost is real. Second, escalation. If we broaden strikes from interdiction to regime pressure, Congress and international partners will ask where the legal lines are drawn. Third, strategic aftermath. Taking down smuggling vessels may reduce immediate flows, but cartels and insurgents adapt. They use submarines, clandestine airdrops, overland routes. They are innovators in logistics. A few strikes may deter some activity, but they won't cure the underlying economic and political conditions that fuel the trade. So, what should viewers take away tonight? First, we are watching a clear shift toward more aggressive U.S. action in the hemisphere, kinetic strikes paired with covert efforts. Second, there is no consensus at home or abroad about the wisdom or legality of moving so fast and so forcefully. And third, this story is not just about boats. It's about policy choices that will shape U.S. relations in Latin America for years to come. I'll be following developments closely. For now, 3 dead, a Pentagon claim, a Colombian protest, congressional concern, and a White House posture that says the fight against drugs will be fought.